based on that, drugs started coming. One was heparin. By late 70s, the fibrinolytic agents, thrombolytic, and I still remember in 1981 when I was in Cleveland, in Cleveland, and in 82 in USA Medical Center, one of the first reports of thrombolysis by Marcus D. Wood was published, and it was like something like dream, like somebody injecting a drug and the artery opening up, and they were doing dog models and then humans. And this, if you look back, is not too far away. And then came the whole plethora of platelets. And in 80s to 90s, in my first angioplasties of 1983, 84, we used to give 30,000 units of heparin, no aspirin, no clopidogrels, no ticlopidins. We didn't have those magical drugs. And these drugs then came into the horizon. And then lastly, the GP2B3A inhibitors. The eighth miracle, eighth discovery which I rate is echocardiography, again out of Europe. Inge Edler, a Swedish cardiologist, and Helmut Hertz. They come with a sonar device adapted from submarines and came with echocardiography, and that opened up a major area of intra-body imaging. And this is where we stand now. And then came the nuclear imaging, cardiovascular MRIs, CT angios, all lumped together into what we call as the imaging era. Same time in late 50s, early 50s, Paul Zoll discovered the first external pacemaker, and Zoll's defibrillator are still available now. And in 1970, Michael Mirowski, an Israeli cardiologist, who again I met in early 80s in one of the conferences, invented the implantable cardioverter defibrillator. And that opened up a whole area of interventional electrophysiology, various ablation, and various EP family came. Lastly, the 10th discovery was Andreas Grunzig, again Europe. You can see almost 70% of these discoveries emanated from Europe. Andreas Grunzig came out with the concept of opening the arteries using a balloon technology. And I had again the privilege of attending his first live course, I think it was in 83, in Atlanta, the first live course in America before his untimely death in an airplane accident. In angioplasty, there were three revolutions. First was the primary angioplasty, opening the infarct-related artery early enough. And this has stood the test of time. The second discovery in angioplasty intervention was the advent of stents. And lastly, the drug-eluting stents. So the first primary angioplasty came with the concept that myocardial salvage should be done in the critical time-dependent period. And with that now, it is almost mandatory. And again, the Europeans came out with some of the first early data out of Netherlands, Denmark, of early intervention saving lives and heart. Stenting also came out of Europe. Dr. Sigwart, Ulrich Sigwart, am I right, William? Yeah, discovered the first stents, again a friend of William, I believe, and he was in England. And out of 10 cases, few died actually from stent thrombosis, but that technology evolved. And there was a limitation of restenosis. And then Cypher came out, Johnson & Johnson, with a drug-eluting stent in 2002, a landmark New England Journal article. With lot of drug-eluting stents, we also found out limitations of drug-eluting stents, stent thrombosis, lot of areas where new generation stents started coming. We had Texas and Cypher, and then second generation Zions and Endeavor, and there were pros and cons and debates, which Dr. William Wine will talk in few minutes after my talk. And now new next generation stents are coming with endothelial progenitor cells, reservoir technology, and the latest bioabsorbable stents. So 2009 and beyond will take us into the high growth area in stent technology. Last few slides, I'll show you what's advancing, and again you'll have detailed lectures throughout the session. Percutaneous valve repair is coming, and Dr. Saibal Kar, who is flown in this morning from Los Angeles, will talk about it. And whole new expansion is taking place again out of Europe and US, where valve surgery is replaced with percutaneous technology. Valve repairs are being done with percutaneous technology, and lot of structural heart disease like ASDs, PFOs, congenital heart diseases, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, carotid stentings, all of which you will hear over the next few days. These are a part of the 10th last revolution. What has also happened is the 4th revolution, which I mentioned, was the cardiovascular surgery, and the 10th, which was intervention, are joining hands into a hybrid concept. A hybrid concept is a combination where off-pump bypass combined with PCI, a minimally invasive bypass with combining PCI, an endoscopic bypass with PCI, or a bypass with combined percutaneous valve replacement. These are all hybrid procedures. These are part of the same discoveries. So in first summary of 250 years and last 25 years, through multitude of well-controlled trials, miracles, scientific discoveries, lots of work of research, we have enormous achievements which is leading cardiology toward a phenomenal specialty. This is what we have learned. But there are 10 more challenges ahead of us. The first and the foremost challenge is primary prevention. There's a huge iceberg there where primary prevention is not focused. Second is updating and implementation of evidence-based guidelines. It is unfortunate that all of us have become lethargic. We don't catch up and keep up with our guidelines, and we have to do it. Third, which is around the horizon, is genetic screening, pharmacogenomics, and developing biobanks. And it is coming slowly and steadily, and we have talks on those areas. Gene therapy, stem cell, we have our annual wonderful talk from William Vines tomorrow, and it is again a challenge. It isn't as easy as we believed 10 years ago. Integration of imaging techniques, plaque imaging, with clinical science is a challenge. We have now this technology, CT angios, IVAS, hi-fi echocardiography machines, and then we are stuck and we do not know how to integrate them. New interventions are coming, biodegradable stents are coming, but the long-term data are still pending. Invasive treatment of heart failure will be a challenge, because heart failure is now single most disease leading to admissions in European and Western hospitals. Invasive treatment of arrhythmias is a long way to go. Percutaneous valve replacement and new surgical techniques, as I mentioned. And lastly, an outreach management of patient through various registries and home monitoring will be a future using web technology. And as you will see today, we are launching for the first time in India and maybe in the world a conference offering doctors to provide a website for each and every one of you who are interested. I've never seen in ACC or in ESC or in CSI an organization telling doctors that we will bear the cost, but you have a website. Why do you need a website? On a website, you can tell to your patients, your society, including yourself, who you are and what you'll be able to offer. So this is a launch, and please take advantage of what we are offering you. That will take care of everything except a nominal 1,000 rupee registration charge. We will develop a website for you, whether there are 500 people or 1,000. It's a challenge we are taking. And eventually, using web enabling, we can have many of these features available on your website. Near future, 2010 to 2020, it is likely that we'll continue this super specialization for technical virtuosity and clinical excellence, how to do better plasties, how to reduce door-to-balloon time. But what is important is phenotypic risk markers, C-reactive proteins, BNP, etc. are coming round the clock. Prevalence of heart failure is increasing. And pharmacogenomics, and again the pharmacogenomics lab and Jayesh Sheth in Ahmedabad is a pioneer. You should meet him one of these days. You should go and visit his new genetic lab. A wonderful human being, down to earth, a great person, and he can guide you through lot of discoveries and lot of things he's doing out of Ahmedabad. In heart failure, there are 3 pathways we are going towards: devices with ICD, left ventricular assist devices, cell treatment, which again we'll have a talk tomorrow, and xenotransplant. Lot of adrenergic receptor variants are being identified. These receptors will identify patients who are hypertensive or will become. And how does it help you? By identifying these receptors in childhood. If nothing else, you can modify child's habit by asking him to eat less salt, making sure he takes care of it. And there are multiple genetic and environmental combination factors which are being discovered. The future. So until 2020, next 10 years, we will see more of drug-eluting stents, devices, cell therapy, xenotransplants. This will be accompanied by great expansion of population, a large increase in elderly, diabetics, obese, and previous interventions. And beyond 2020, the interventions will continue to improve. But beyond 2020, the future is going to be difficult to predict, and it's more problematic. I went through a lot of literature, and this is what I think will happen 2020. And how many of you were here when I gave some of my first talks in 1995? Can you raise your hands? Quite a few. We used to talk about S inhibitors. We used to talk about early days of CRTs. We used to talk about invasive EP. If you look back, all of that has come true and more. So what I'm going to predict is something when I'm 62 and Milan is 60, we'll still be having a conference, hopefully in a bigger auditorium in other part of town, and we'll see if this comes true. Genetics and genomics will allow the subclassification of disease to gene-informed therapy. It will be called smart therapy. Genetic identification of the future development of risk factor will lead to gene-informed personalized prevention. That will be called smart prevention. So we'll have smart prevention and smart therapy. An example is what I mentioned earlier, that anti-hypertensive therapy or anti-diabetic therapy will be based on this smart prevention and smart therapy. And because of that, we can prime our primary prevention from childhood. And try to imagine all of us will be in this way and will not have this. The grand goal, of course, is to eliminate cardiovascular disease, and that is a goal that hopefully, and I believe predictably, by 2050, if we look at the curves, we may be able to eliminate most of the heart disease. So again, the future which is present, which is full of intervention, will change towards prevention. And that my famous repeat slide from USC, that in 1982, when we were at USC, all the doctors went on strike because we were not paid enough. And the local death rate fell by 18%. And I do see that by 2050, and I'll still be around. I'll be just little old, like 100 years old, but the longevity will be 120. I'll be somewhere relaxing, enjoying in the back with a can, and probably will be talking of something totally uncardiology. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'll end my talk here.